4:17 a.m. The Taiwan Strait. Total darkness. Zero moon. Wind out of the northeast at 11 knots, pushing a low chop across black water that reflects nothing. In the narrow band of ocean between the Chinese coast and the western shore of Taiwan, 110 miles at its widest point, barely 80 miles at its narrowest. The surface was alive with steel. Dozens of wakes cutting through the night, white foam trails glowing faint in the infrared, invisible to the naked eye but burning bright on every sensor that mattered. It had begun 3 hours earlier. At 1:22 a.m., the Eastern Theater Command of the People's Liberation Army had initiated what Beijing called Operation Reunification Storm. It was the most ambitious amphibious operation attempted by any nation since the Allied landings at Normandy in 1944. Larger in raw numbers, more technologically complex, and built around one central assumption: that America would not respond in time. They were wrong about that, but they had reasons to believe what they believed. For 6 months, PLA strategic planners had watched the global news cycle and drawn their conclusions. NATO was stretched across Eastern Europe. The U.S. Congress had been locked in a budget standoff that delayed 2 carrier deployments by a combined 11 weeks. American domestic politics were loud and divisive. The window, the generals in Beijing told themselves, had never been wider, and so they moved. The scale of what the PLA assembled was genuinely staggering. 47 Type 071 and Type 075 amphibious assault ships carrying a combined force of 22,000 Marines, 1,600 armored vehicles, and over 400 landing craft. 63 surface combatants, Type 052D and Type 055 destroyers, Type 054A frigates, spread in an escort formation covering 300 square miles of ocean. 144 J-15 and J-16 strike aircraft positioned at 11 airfields along the Fujian coast, loaded and fueled and waiting for dawn. 2 Type 094 Jin-class ballistic missile submarines had moved to pre-launch positions in the South China Sea. And above all of it, a constellation of Yaogan reconnaissance satellites provided Beijing with what its commanders believed was total real-time situational awareness over the entire Taiwan Strait. To add to this, at 1:19 a.m., 3 minutes before the fleet sortied, the PLA Strategic Support Force initiated cyber operations against Taiwan's integrated air defense network. Within 7 minutes, 11 of Taiwan's 23 long-range radar sites reported degraded or lost functionality. The remaining 12 were being actively jammed by Y-8G electronic warfare aircraft orbiting 60 miles offshore. By 1:30 a.m., Taiwan's air picture was Swiss cheese. Beijing believed it had blinded the island. It had not blinded what was watching from 1,000 miles away, because the PLA had made 5 catastrophic mistakes. The first mistake: they believed their fleet movements had been concealed. They had used strict radio silence, emissions control, and had coordinated fleet sorties from multiple ports to avoid satellite detection. What they had not accounted for was that the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency had been running continuous machine learning analysis on commercial satellite imagery, synthetic aperture radar, and AIS transponder anomaly data for 4 months. The NGA had flagged the abnormal logistics patterns, the ammunition loading, the fuel barging, the positioning of hospital ships, 31 days before Operation Reunification Storm began. Washington had known it was coming. Exactly when, and from where. The second mistake: they targeted Taiwan's radar network and believed that blinding Taiwan meant blinding the United States. It did not. The E-8 CJ Stars battle management aircraft that had been orbiting at 43,000 feet over the Philippine Sea since 10 p.m. the previous evening had painted the entire PLA fleet before the first ship cleared its harbor entrance. Every hull, every wake, every formation. The data was flowing in real time to Pacific Fleet headquarters at Pearl Harbor, to Indopacom at Camp Smith, and to the combat information centers of the 2 carrier strike groups that had been repositioning, quietly, without public announcement, for the past 72 hours. The third mistake: they assumed the U.S. carrier groups were still where the last satellite pass had shown them. They were not. USS Ronald Reagan and her strike group had turned off their AIS transponders, shifted to MCON Alpha, complete electronic silence, and moved 240 miles from their last known position over the previous 48 hours. USS Carl Vinson had done the same from a different direction. Both strike groups were now inside the first island chain, positioned northeast and southeast of Taiwan respectively, outside PLA over-the-horizon radar coverage, and they had been there since midnight. The fourth mistake: the PLA's anti-submarine warfare capability, despite massive investment, remained insufficient to track modern American nuclear submarines operating in active evasion mode. 3 Virginia-class fast attack submarines and 1 Ohio-class guided missile submarine, carrying 154 Tomahawk cruise missiles in her converted missile tubes, had been inside the Taiwan Strait operating area for 11 days. Silent, invisible, patient. The fifth mistake, and it would prove to be the most decisive, was that Beijing had briefed its senior commanders that the United States would require 72 to 96 hours to generate a credible military response. They had built their operational timeline around that assumption. They planned to have 20,000 troops ashore on Taiwan's western coast and an established defensive perimeter in place before America could decisively engage. What they had failed to account for was that the response had already been generated. It was already airborne. It was already underwater. It was already waiting. What happened in the next 44 minutes would redefine what the word overwhelming means. At 4:17 a.m., the E-8C JSTARS relayed its updated fleet picture to both carrier strike groups and to the SSB and USS Michigan, holding station at periscope depth 60 nautical miles south of the Penghu Islands. The picture was complete. The PLA fleet was in open water, strung out in amphibious formation, the most vulnerable posture any naval force can adopt. Amphibious ships loaded to their maximum capacity with troops, vehicles, and fuel are slow, high-sided, top-heavy, and almost entirely dependent on their escorts for defense. They are, in the blunt language of naval warfare, targets. Pacific Fleet had pre-authorized weapons release at 4 a.m. At 4:17 a.m. and 42 seconds, USS Michigan came to launch depth and opened her first 4 missile hatches. The Tomahawk Block 5 cruise missiles emerged from the water in columns of white spray and ignited their turbofan engines. One after another. 10 missiles. 20. 40. 80. The Ohio-class submarine had been reprogrammed with her full target list during a covert data uplink 6 hours earlier. Each Tomahawk had a pre-assigned target from the comprehensive PLA fleet picture provided by JSTARS. The missiles separated, descended to their low-altitude cruise profiles, and vanished into the darkness over the strait. Simultaneously, the 2 Virginia-class submarines operating in the northern and southern approach lanes opened their torpedo tube doors. Mark 48 ADCAP torpedoes, the most capable heavyweight torpedo in the world, acquired their assigned targets on active sonar and accelerated to over 55 knots. Their targets were the 2 Type 094 ballistic missile submarines that the PLA had positioned in the South China Sea as a deterrence backstop. Both PLA submarines had been tracked continuously for 9 days. They never heard what killed them. At 4:19 a.m., the strike wings aboard USS Ronald Reagan and USS Carl Vinson began their launch cycles. From the Reagan, operating northeast of Taiwan, 26 FA-18 Super Hornets and 8 F-35C Lightning IIs went to full afterburner down the catapults in an 11-minute launch evolution. From the Vinson to the southeast, another 22 Super Hornets and 10 F-35Cs followed. 66 strike aircraft in total, forming up in the darkness at altitude, receiving their targeting data via encrypted Link 16 data links from the orbiting E-2D Hawkeyes. The F-35Cs went first. Their passive infrared sensors and AN/APG-81 radar were invisible to Chinese detection. No emissions, no radar, no IFF. They slipped past the outer PLA escort ring at medium altitude, completely invisible to the Type 052 D destroyers H-H HQ-9 air defense radar, because those radars were looking outward, not inward, and because the electronic warfare pods on the EA-18G Growlers orbiting 60 miles away had already begun injecting false tracks into the PLA fleet's data network at 4:14 a.m., 3 minutes before the first missile left USS Michigan. The Chinese fleet picture showed 37 incoming tracks from the northwest. Ghosts. Generated noise. The real threats were coming from 4 different directions at once, and the PLA combat information centers had no idea. The Tomahawks arrived first. At 4:31 a.m., 14 minutes after USS Michigan's first launch, 80 Tomahawk missiles entered the PLA fleet formation from the south and west, traveling at 550 miles per hour at an altitude of 90 feet above the wave tops. Their assigned targets were not the escort combatants. Their targets were the 47 amphibious ships. The amphibious ships were the center of gravity of the entire operation. Sink them, and there was no invasion. No troops ashore. No armored vehicles. No bridgehead. The entire strategic purpose of Operation Reunification Storm resided in those 47 hulls, and they were clustered together in tight formation, exactly as amphibious doctrine required, which meant exactly as the targeting package had predicted. The first Tomahawk hit a Type 075 helicopter assault ship amidships at 4:31 a.m. and 11 seconds. Its 1,000-pound JMEWS warhead penetrated 2 decks before detonating in the vehicle bay. The ship's aviation fuel storage ignited. The explosion was visible on infrared imagery from 40 miles away. Then the rest arrived, not in sequence. All at once. 80 Tomahawks simultaneously entering the formation from 3 axes, their impact timing compressed by flight path management to within a 47-second window. The PLA escort ships, the Type 052D destroyers with their HHQ-9 missiles and Type 1130 close-in weapon systems, were not psychologically or doctrinally prepared for this. Their defensive doctrine was built around sequential threats. 1 axis, 1 wave, sufficient time to engage, reload, re-engage. Not 80 simultaneous inbound tracks from 3 directions, with a combined closing speed that made their engagement timelines measured in seconds. The HQ-9 batteries aboard the escort ships fired. They killed 11 Tomahawks. The remaining 69 continued inbound. 19 amphibious ships were hit in the first volley. 3 sank within 4 minutes. 6 more were burning and dead in the water, their troop-packed vehicle decks engulfed. 10 sustained damage that ranged from severe to catastrophic. In those ships, the 22,000 PLA Marines who had boarded with expectations of a glorious landing on Taiwan's shores were instead fighting fires, flooding compartments, and catastrophic structural failures in total darkness and chaos. But the Tomahawks were only the opening act. At 4:33 a.m., the F-35Cs entered their attack runs. Each F-35C carried 2 AGM-158 JASSM stealth cruise missiles on internal hardpoints, maintaining their full radar cross-section advantage, plus 2 AIM-120D AMRAAMS for self-defense. The JASSM had a range of over 500 miles and a 1,000-pound penetrating warhead, and it had been specifically designed to defeat layered air defense systems by flying unpredictable low-altitude profiles, guided by terrain-following algorithms. Against ships in open water, it was devastating. 18 F-35Cs released their JASSMs from beyond visual range. 36 missiles in the air simultaneously. Their targets, the surviving large-deck amphibious ships, and critically, the 3 Type 055 destroyer flagships that form the command and control backbone of the PLA fleet. The Type 055 is the most capable surface combatant China has ever built. 12,000 tons, 112 vertical launch cells, advanced radar, sophisticated electronic warfare. In the calculus of Pacific Fleet planners, it was the ship that had to die first, because without its long-range OHHQ-26 air defense umbrella, the rest of the escort force was critically vulnerable to follow-on strikes. All three Type 055s were hit. The first took two jawsome impacts on her forward launcher section at 4:36 a.m. The VLS cells cooked off in a secondary explosion that removed the entire forward third of the ship. She capsized in 11 minutes. The second was hit by three JASSMs in a pattern that collapsed her superstructure and detonated her remaining missile load. The explosion registered on seismographs in Okinawa as a 1.4 magnitude event. The third managed to get her HHQ-26 air defense system online and fired 3 missiles before the fourth JASSM, coming in from her starboard quarter at wave-top altitude, struck her engineering spaces. She lost all propulsion and all electrical power and sat dead in the water as the battle raged around her. Then the F/A-18 strike packages arrived. 66 strike aircraft, carrying a combined load of over 200 AGM-84 Harpoon anti-ship missiles, AGM-88 HARM anti-radiation missiles, and Mark 84 2,000-pound guided bombs, swept through the now devastated PLA formation in 4 coordinated waves over the next 21 minutes. With the 3 Type 055s destroyed or neutralized, and 8 of the 14 Type 052D escort destroyers either sunk or severely damaged by the combined Tomahawk and JASSM strikes, the remaining escort vessels had lost all coordination. Their command networks were down. Their shared air picture was corrupted by ongoing EA-18G jamming. They were fighting blind, independently, against an enemy they could not see and could not track. The Harpoons swept through the formation's gaps, one by one, then in pairs, then in salvos. The remaining amphibious ships were struck. Type 071 landing platform docks that had carried 300 Marines each. Landing ship tanks loaded with Type 15 light tanks and ZBD-05 infantry fighting vehicles. The fuel and ammunition ships in the rear echelon that kept the entire operation alive. In 21 minutes of continuous strikes, the F/A-18 wings sank or disabled another 23 vessels. At the same time, the HARM missiles went to work. Every PLA radar that illuminated, every fire control radar, every surface search radar, every air defense acquisition radar that went active trying to track the incoming aircraft, was immediately detected by the ALQ-218 tactical jamming receivers on the EA-18G Growlers. Its coordinates transmitted to the HARM seekers, and a missile was on its way before the radar operator could decide to turn it off. 27 PLA radar systems across the fleet were destroyed in this way in 19 minutes. The few that survived did so by going dark. And a dark radar is a blind radar. By 5:01 a.m., 44 minutes after USS Michigan's first Tomahawk launch, the battle was effectively over. What remained of the PLA amphibious fleet was scattered across a 30-mile stretch of the Taiwan Strait in various states of destruction. Burning, sinking, dead in the water. The waters of the strait were lit from horizon to horizon by fires that turned the pre-dawn sky orange. The 63-ship escort formation that had shepherded the amphibious force into the strait had been reduced in 44 minutes to 11 functional combatants. And those 11 were fleeing west toward the Chinese coast at maximum speed, making no attempt to cover their charges or continue the mission. The PLA's air campaign, the 144 J-15s and J-16s at Fujian airfields, had launched at 4:20 a.m. as planned, attempting to establish air superiority over the strait ahead of the amphibious landing. They ran directly into the F-35Cs, which had completed their initial strike runs and were now climbing back to altitude, plus the combat air patrol established by the Reagans and Vincent's alert fighters. The engagement that followed was not close. The F-35C's AIM-120D AMRAAM, with its two-way data link and active terminal homing, was fired from ranges that the J-15S radar could not resolve. Of the first wave of 44 PLA fighters, 29 were destroyed before any of them reached visual range of a U.S. aircraft. The remainder turned back. The PLA launched a second fighter wave at 4:52 a.m. The Aegis destroyers and cruisers of both carrier strike groups, now operating inside surface missile range of the fleeing PLA fleet remnants, contributed SM-6 extended-range missiles to the air engagement. SM-6 has an anti-air range of over 130 nautical miles and can engage non-maneuvering aircraft with a probability of kill exceeding 90%. 18 more PLA aircraft were destroyed by SM-6 before crossing the median line of the strait. The second wave also turned back. No PLA aircraft reached effective strike range of either carrier. Not one. The final accounting, compiled by Pacific Fleet Intelligence over the subsequent 36 hours from signals intelligence, overhead imagery, and acoustic records, was staggering in its completeness. Of the 47 PLA amphibious ships that sortied with Operation Reunification Storm, 29 sunk, 14 severely damaged and non-operational, 4 driven back to port with moderate damage. 0 made a successful landing on Taiwan. 0 troops reached the beach. The 22,000 PLA Marines who had boarded those ships at 1:22 a.m., casualties among them were assessed at between 4,200 and 5,800 killed and wounded, with thousands more rescued from the water by their own fleet remnants in the hours after the battle. The exact number would not be known for weeks. Of the 63 PLA surface escort combatants, 17 sunk, 22 severely damaged, 11 moderately damaged and retreating, 13 functional and withdrawing. All 3 Type 055 command ships destroyed, both Type 094 ballistic missile submarines sunk by Virginia-class submarines south of Taiwan. No SLBM launches. PLA aircraft losses in the air engagements over the strait. 51 confirmed kills, with an additional 9 assessed probable kills based on acoustic and radar track termination data. On the American side, 1 F/A-18E sustained battle damage from a PLA HHQ-9 missile proximity detonation and diverted to Kadena Air Base in Okinawa. The pilot was uninjured. The aircraft was assessed as repairable. 0 fatalities. 0 additional aircraft losses. 0 ships damaged. The 2 carrier strike groups held their positions east of Taiwan and continued flight operations through the following day, establishing a combat air patrol over the strait that went unchallenged. In Beijing, the Politburo Standing Committee convened an emergency session at 6 a.m. The deliberations were classified. What was known was the outcome, a unilateral ceasefire declaration at 9:47 a.m., transmitted through the Swiss diplomatic channel. Operation Reunification Storm was over. It had lasted, from first ship sortied to ceasefire declared, 8 hours and 25 minutes. In Taipei, on the western shore of the island that had watched the horizon light up orange before dawn, the people who had stood on their rooftops and beaches and seen the fires burning across the water understood, perhaps more clearly than anyone else in the world, exactly what had happened. America had placed itself between them and what was coming. And what was coming had been stopped so completely, so rapidly, so overwhelmingly that it had never reached the shore. In the Taiwan Strait, 53 meters beneath the surface, debris fields were still settling when the sun rose over the Pacific. This is what happens when a military that has trained for 30 years to take one island attempts to do so against a nation that has spent those same 30 years building the most sophisticated power projection capability in human history. This is what happens when you mistake preparation time for permission. The USS Ronald Reagan and USS Carl Vinson continued their operations the following day. Their flight decks were busy. Their crews were calm. Their mission was unchanged. Somewhere beneath the strait, the Virginia-class submarines were already reloading. They are always reloading, and the watch continues.